Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay up at the back? Yep, that's fine. Okay, good morning and welcome to our second annual IT Service and Support Conference. My name is Mark Stephen. I'm going to be chairing today's event. Before I basically turn our speakers loose, I need to run through some intimations. First, can you please make sure that all mobile phones or electronic devices are switched to silent? If it goes off during a presentation, you have to stand up and do a little dance. It's very embarrassing. Toilets you've passed on the way down, that's on floor 2. Needless to say, there's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if it sounds it's for real, just follow the Digit staff out. Actually, follow Ray out, because he's going to live forever, so it'll be absolutely fine. All catering will take place in the Stratosphere upstairs, and that's where you registered. And if you're using the venue car park downstairs, you can get a reduced rate of £6 by visiting the conference registration desk and gracing their palm with silver. Dead straightforward. We've got some cracking speakers for you today. Lots of sponsors upstairs. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to get somebody else to talk about that just now. Sadly, Ray Bug, the founder of Digit, is unable to be with us today. So he sent his grandfather along instead. Please welcome Gammer Bug. We just call him Old Beardy.
Thank you for that. I'm actually fashioning this, so when it gets long enough, we'll take it off very carefully and create a toupee for Mark. Welcome, everybody. First event of 2024. First of, I think, of about 10 we're doing in 2024. It's going to be an incredibly busy year. There's lots happening. We're shifting over a bit more to Glasgow as well with some of the events, but not diluting what we do here in Edinburgh. We just discovered that Glasgow's another place, and there's another audience there that needs this type of activity. First thing I want to do is thank the very, very generous sponsors. We're sponsor funded entirely. What we make from delegate revenue is virtually zero, because 99% of you here today have come for free because you fit that criteria for free attendance. So we are sponsor funded. They pay for everything. So thank you to Halo, ITSM, who are a Scottish-born company who are our headline sponsor, Manage Engine, GoTo, EasyO, Quorum, our co-sponsors, and our supporting exhibitors as well. Please, please, please do afford them a couple of minutes of your time over the course of the day. Happy sponsors, we keep going. Happy delegates, we keep going. And there's probably some very good incentivized products and services and giveaways and swag and prizes on the stands there. Maybe one or two are doing a raffle. Who knows? Go around and you'll find out. Coming up on the Digit agenda, next event is next month. If you want to come, be quick. That is 95% full. We will be closing registration very, very soon. Scott Secure, now in its 10th year. It's the biggest cyber event in Scotland. We should have this place full front to back on the day. If you've got colleagues who work in cyber and it's not for you, please do forward it on to them, but tell them to be quick. That is filling up quickly. We are over in Glasgow for our first Digit Expo. In Glasgow. We've done 5 in Edinburgh, but realised that Glasgow needs its own. So we're going to be there at the SEC live on the 29th of May. Should be about 1,200 people there and 50 exhibitors, 4 different stages that you can just go and pick and choose what you go and see. It's not the traditional conference format. It's a smorgasbord of different talks you can just jump in and out of. And I'm sure a lot of you are having internal discussions about this at the minute, ESG. It's a bit of a conundrum for the IT folk at the minute, because obviously the C-suite are demanding agility. Where's the AI, Gen AI? But we are sucking more energy into the business, and there's a lot of discussions about how this is actually going to work. And the more and more businesses are now being accountable on their carbon output. So come along on the 20th of June. We'll be talking about that. We'll be looking at the policies, how IT, how it consumes energy within the business. Maybe offer up some solutions as to how businesses are lowering their energy output through different use of IT, but also talking about the types of technologies that can be used and the conundrum around how it's going to work for you, because a lot of businesses are now very accountable for what they put out. in energy, and that's now being looked at from a buying perspective as well. So that's our lineup for the next few months. There's our lineup for the remainder of the year. We'll send you everything post-event so you can have a look at it. Most of the registrations are already open, and you can register for your whole year's worth of events if you want to. And we recommend that because we know how your diaries fill up very, very quickly. So the further forward we can give you notice of events, the more you can book in and take the time out to go and attend them. Over the course of the day, we will be using Slido. Slido is a great tool for interaction. Some of you may not like putting your hands up in the Q&A. You might want to be anonymous and type a question in. You might want to be a little bit more left field with the questioning. You can do that via Slido, but we do encourage the hands to go up. I think that dialogue between attendee and speaker, I think, is really invaluable. Over the course of the day as well, ladies and gents, do interact with people. If there's, go and meet someone new. I know there's little pockets of people that know each other here, but get out and about. And if you see somebody on their own, invite them into your crowd as well. Do a bit more networking. Have a great day. I'm going to hand you over to the interesting people now, and thank you for coming.
I look forward with interest to the toupee. It's kind of chilly in the wintertime, so thank you for that. Our first speaker, Alex Kantor, is Director of Technology at Modulr, and what Alex is going to be talking about is the drivers and the levers that are available to enable service improvement. So, Alex, over to you.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the invite to be here today. So just a little bit about me to begin with. Started my career off at Tesco PLC and then moving on to Tesco Bank, but now currently at Modulr. So at Tesco PLC, I was in that kind of service delivery environment. That's where I first started off my career. At Tesco Bank, I then went to be the bane of the life of the service delivery people by delivering change. And now at Modulr, I'm responsible for both sides of those coins. So it's been a real interesting journey through various different sizes of companies, and hopefully today I'll be able to take you through a bit of value in some of those drivers and levers for what I've picked up for managing service delivery over the years. So what are the main challenges that I've really come across and really seen and I think resonate with a few people in terms of that service delivery that picked up over the years? Revenue is one of those key North Star things for any company, especially startups. They have to focus on that revenue. But revenue can lead to a number of those tactical decisions that you need to make to get through that. Tactical isn't necessarily bad. We don't need to see tactical as bad, but we need to be intentional about it, because if we're not intentional, we can start growing that operational debt. And many of you in the room that lead some of those BAU support teams will know about their growing operational debt. But then if priority is driven by revenue, how do you actually put a figure on that operational debt so that you can prioritize it and fix it? And many of us have been in that situation before. We don't know how to get out of that. And trying to find that space to be intentional and ensure your team's not drowning are some of the difficult challenges that I've seen a lot of others face and I've faced over the year, and also that I've caused over the year. I'll put my hand up to that as well. So today we'll be talking through a few points in terms of on the agenda. It's not improving things that shouldn't be there. How do you continue to serve an organization whilst you adapt? Risk and audit, make them your best friends. Technology to be accelerate, and being a victim. So I'm going to start with that last point of being a victim, and obviously the slide kind of gives away where I'm going with this, but the frustration that you can feel when you're in an operational team, when delivery teams and project teams just throw things over the fence at you, and you are the ones that have to pick it up, and you're the ones that deal with it, and you're left with it, and you just have that anger and frustration of not being able to deal with that. But is that really the case? Or is it a case of how easy is it to procrastinate and blame because we don't actually know where to start to fix that problem? On any task that we do, how much easier is it when we know the what, the why, the how, and the when? So if we know that in terms of these are the elements that make things easy, what responsibility have you taken to actually make that happen, for you to know the what, the why, and the how, and when, to make things better for you in your teams? One of the great quotes that I've been living by recently is that when you start to take responsibility for everything in your life, is the moment you tap into the power to you can change anything in your life. Now, this is a quote from Hal Elrod in the book The Miracle Morning, and so highly recommend having a read of that as well, but it really resonated to me this year. There's so many times where I've wanted to blame others, but then looking at this quote, it's actually looking inward. And actually, is it actually that you're more upset with yourself for allowing things to happen and not actually taking the energy and the drive to change things and own it and take responsibility, and instead playing the victim, because it's easy to play the victim, but is it actually the right thing to do? It's on us as leaders to be coaching left, right, up, down into how to actually affect that change, how that we can work collaboratively, how you can make the project teams understand that what they're delivering is outputs, not outcomes. An outcome for the company will be how you solve that whole service piece together and not just have a team celebrating while you feel that you've had things dumped over the fence. So really, you need to question yourselves, and are you taking responsibility for everything so that you can change anything? So when you start doing that, you go, well, okay, what do I change? How do I change things differently? And this is where I kind of lead into one of the first things, which is not improving solutions that shouldn't be there. And this is a quote that I found from an AWS conference. I can't remember who said it, but it really stuck. There's so many times that we just try and tweak things that shouldn't actually be there. And what we find is that it actually exacerbates a problem. It makes things stickier and harder to remove. Instead of focusing on what we actually need to do to kind of get rid of some of those tactical and make the strategic solutions, we just go, it's okay, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this. But those things shouldn't be there. But on the flip side of that, what if actually improving it buys you some more time so that you can fix other issues? Then you're in a bit of a juxtaposition, because this shouldn't be here, but if I tweak it, I can buy myself more time. What happens if spending 1 week on improving it buys you 10? So this is where you've got to have some really intentional conversations around what it is that you've got, the processes that you're looking at, what shouldn't be there, are we improving something that shouldn't be there, and why are we doing that? And if it is really the case that you have to improve what shouldn't be there and the return on investment is worth it, can you edge it more towards the standards where it should be, or can you edge it more towards an exit? One of the ways that I've found that's really successful in doing this is kind of the processes on this slide in terms of collating all the BAU activities, hopefully a number of you have a log, but actually measuring the impact to your team. The impact, as I talked about before, in terms of putting that revenue figure on is very difficult, but you can put on time taken and you can assign risk and impact of error. These are kind of levers that you can use. From that, you can prioritize what you want to tackle, plan some ideas for how to solve it, propose a business case, execute, and then measure the impact. Measuring the impact is one of the key things that you have to do, because you're actually showing that what you're doing is actually making a difference. You're getting some credit, you're getting some respect to do more, and you need to repeat. One of the dangers of this list, though, is that you spend so much time in analysis paralysis stage, that you go through everything, you make, well, let's get the full list before we get there, and there's that great phrase that perfect is the enemy of good. You just need to be good enough on this list to get moving. And as much as it pains me to say it, the best example of perfect being the enemy of good was on Saturday, where Scotland were far from perfect. They were good enough to beat England. They got the result they needed, but that South African was pretty perfect. That's a bit of hypocrisy talking right there. Some of you may be thinking, oh, what, having a week of time to improve something? That'd be nice. To which I will say, are you a victim or are you a leader? That's provocative, sue me. Find the time, make the time. It's on you to take the responsibility, but you've got to be disciplined in doing that. Discipline is doing the right thing, not the easy thing. But that's down to you as leaders to take that responsibility. Now, in terms of measuring the impact, one of the things we're talking about is the risk and impact of error. And one of the great things that I've learned over the last 5 to 6 years is actually about risk and audit, your new besties. There are so many people in this room that will hold risk and audit away, or give them what you think they need to get them off your back so that you can carry on. Wrong approach. Totally the wrong approach. And this is something that I have learned and developed over time. You can actually get a lot of funding for reducing risk. So I'm not just saying use them to your own advantage, but actually build that collaborative environment and don't shy away from them. Work together collaboratively, because what you actually find is it will bring some clarity to your roadmap in terms of how you can actually get yourself out of the situation you're in, not just protect you as a team and protect the company, but actually look at how you prioritize, where you can make changes, and out of appetite risks need to be addressed. Now, what I'm not saying is make everything you're doing an out of appetite risk so that you get the funding to address it, but it can help you really prioritize, and working alongside risk and audit and having an audit on your function will give you some of those areas to prioritize. Now, this is one of the things that we did at Modulr with audit, and it's one of the proudest things that I've done there in terms of understanding the policies inside out and the why, and getting creative. So one of the audits that we looked at was around our change management, and just showing the evidence that we had to ensure the decisions we were making were correct. And what this actually led to was us questioning that segregation of duty piece. Now, in many organizations I've been in, segregation of duty means some sort of developer, engineer, builder handing it over to another team with a load of text to say why it's okay. And we're somehow expecting that other team to know that this is all good, but we've gone, it's okay, it's segregation of duty, we're happy, we've satisfied the policy. How we actually flipped that in Modulr was actually asking that question around why. And it wasn't me, it was one of my managers. It took me a while to listen. And I actually created a fairy tale on this. It's a 12-minute fairy tale called The Misunderstood Troll. It's on YouTube, but it's been kind of digitally animated. So if you've got time, have a look at it, The Misunderstood Troll. But essentially, we put the power back in the hands of the engineers. We used tooling from a company called Cosley to actually show that if you follow all of the compliance checks and steps, and you can evidence that you've had many different people acting in the role of checking to make sure things are okay, then that engineer can deploy. You've gone through, you've shown segregation of duty in many different ways. It's not just another team. We've understood the policy, we've got creative. And in 4 years, we had about 900 deployments within Modulr. Last year alone, we had 2,264. So it's over double what we did in the previous 4 years by getting creative, knowing our policies, having an audit, solving a problem, and delivering outcomes for the company. But it's just how you need to think and twist those things around. Now, moving on to one of the final bits of this piece is managing change without slowing down. Obviously, kind of clear processes, it sounds obvious, but it's one of the key things that I've always found. Processes will enable your team to act within the boundaries that they need to, but they just have to be clear, and they have to understand intent. Intent is one of those key words. What's the intent behind it? A good example of this is obviously a pilot. A pilot will take off, fly the plane, land the plane. But in a situation where she might need to make a decision of aborting a landing, she can do that within the boundaries and policies that she's got. But those policies need to be there. You need to understand that intent behind them and having those clear policies so that your team can operate as efficiently as possible without slowing down to ask too many questions. Then when you've got some of those policies, it's using technology to speed up the process. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is seeing a shiny tool going, that solves a problem. I think I've got that problem. And then you finding the problem in the organization because you've seen a solution and then implementing that. But how do you know that's actually solving the biggest one of your problems? Again, it needs that discipline to actually look at the problems that you've got and then use technology to find the solution, not have a solution and match it to the problem. We too often do it the other way around. And so it's really, because we get excited. It's hard not to get excited. But we've got to just have that discipline to look at those processes. What are our biggest problems? How can technology solve that? Don't be afraid to change your operating model. And this is something I found in the last 5 years. I think I've changed the way that the platform and DevOps team work about 6 times. Whether they've been outside of team, ticket-based, half in the team, half out the team. That's the same thing, for those of you who noticed. And just working through those different models and constantly evaluating and measuring to see what's working, what's not. Are we getting the right outcomes that we need? And have we really understood the intent? So again, it's not just fence, chucky, ticket over. It's how as service teams can we really enable our customers, which are normally internal teams. And that's where I'm going to go into that enable someone else and don't let people hide behind policies. The great example of that was obviously the DevOps team enabling the engineering team. It took days of a week away from the DevOps team having to deploy because we enabled the engineers to do that deployment. It sped up outcomes for the company because we're looking at, right, actually, what can we do to enable where this is coming from to actually do what they need to do immediately without raising tickets, without raising changes. We always need to raise a change, sorry, without having to raise a ticket for your team to enable that change. But it just requires a different level of thinking and not letting people hide behind policies and saying, no, the policy says this. Yeah, but why? It's there to protect, but what's the intent? What's the right thing to do, not the easy thing to do? So if I can leave you with one final takeaway, again, it's this quote for me. The moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you realize you can change anything in your life. That doesn't just apply to service delivery, it can apply way out of that. But again, it's down to you to be disciplined, you to take responsibility, and you to really ask yourself, am I annoyed at them, or am I annoyed because I haven't done enough? Looking forward to chatting to you all later on. Thank you for your time and attention this morning, and I think I'll be handing now over to Ollie.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of this. As Ray said, you can either stick your hand up old school or do it on Slido. I think, to be honest, you can scan something on the back of those badges that will allow you to do that, if that's what you want to do. Now, next speaker is Ollie King, Senior Account Executive for Halo ITSM. And what Ollie wants to talk about is the pivotal role of your employees in actually implementing change. So, Ollie, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, great to see so many familiar faces today. I've already spoken with a couple of existing clients. And just for those of you that don't know me, I am Ollie, Senior Account Executive at Halo ITSM, and I've been with Halo for about 2.5 years now, so still quite fresh into the ITSM industry. And we're very happy to be the headline sponsor here. It's our second year at the show. The ITSX Summit has a very close place in our hearts. Our founder is Scottish and Halo is registered in Falkirk. So yeah, really happy to be here today. I am unfortunately not our founder, Paul. He's currently in Bahrain watching the Formula One, so I'm afraid you're stuck with me for the next 15 minutes. We decided to talk today due to the headline of the event being the future of service and support, and this really resonated with myself and the team at Halo ITSM, and it's maybe why I'm talking about a topic that you're not used to seeing at these types of shows. My topic today is new ways of working and capitalizing on those new ways of working. And you're probably wondering why I've actually chosen this topic. This new way of working doesn't mean you need to have a slide or a table tennis table or monkey bars in your office, although, as you can see by the picture, we do have a slide in our office. We're all now familiar with the concept of working from home using Teams, Zoom, etc. But this talk aims to go one step further and actually focuses on how we as Halo ITSM are pushing the boundaries when it comes to a modern workplace to not only drive efficiency but also enhance the service that we deliver to our clients. And off the back of the talk today, I'd like you all to maybe question the way that you work in your organisation and why that's actually the case. Before we look forwards, I think it's important to look backwards, and up on the screen you can see a book called Maverick. I really wish this was an Oprah moment where I could say you've all got a book under your chair. Unfortunately not today. I think it's about £5 off Amazon though if you want to give it a read, and I really would recommend it. I believe that this is the book that our founder read, and this is why we work in the way that we do today. This book, Maverick, was written by Ricardo Semler, and it's about a Brazilian company called Semco. Effectively, Ricardo inherited this company from his father in 1980, and it's a sort of autobiography, so it covers his tenure from 1980 to 1990, and specifically covers his leadership style at this company. His standout methods included letting employees set their own working hours. His employees could set their own salary, and they could even select who they wanted to be their manager. As you can imagine, in the 80s, this leadership style was seen as radical, and his methods were described as being a bit chaotic and a tad unprofessional. But fast forward to today, and many of Semler's methods are in practice and actually starting to become the norm at many organisations, not just in the UK, but globally too. And we'll be touching on what we call the Halo Way, which is our ethos around modern ways of working, in just a second. But I'll first focus on a method that we're all familiar with, and that's hybrid working. I'm sure many of us in the room today have worked from home at one point in our lives. You could argue that now hybrid working is a standard way of working, but why are standard ways of working of the past becoming non-standard? Have we been forced into these ways of working, or is the workplace culture actually directing in a way that benefits the employee more than the employer? Working from home in the 20th century was almost non-existent. As you can see on this graph, in 1981, the percentage of people working from home was sat about 1.5%, and this tripled to 4.7% in 2019. But between February and April, due to COVID, it's quite clear that this was a change that was forced upon us, and that percentage exponentially grows to 43.1%. I think the question I want yourselves to answer today is, do we expect this number to decrease, as we can see from the chart? Yes, but should we want that percentage of people working from home to decrease? Are we driving efficiencies via people being in the office? Is there a balance to find there? Or should we move to complete remote working? Research from the Institute of Social and Economic Data shows that 1 in 3 individuals in the UK currently work in a hybrid working position and would leave that role if that was taken away from them, looking and opting to find a new role where actually remote working was a part of that package. And hybrid working is trending almost as strongly now as when it was forced onto us as a population due to the outbreak of COVID, meaning that 4 in 5 people who currently work in a hybrid model at the moment in the UK would actually recommend a similar working model to their close friends right now. What does capitalising on new ways of working actually look like for myself and our colleagues at Halo ITSM? We're at one end of the scale. I had a brief conversation with the guys here. Some of our methods are a tad unusual, and I definitely want to just project them onto you today to maybe ask why you work in the way that you do and why we work in the way that we do. Our tagline policy, as you can see, is work from wherever, whenever. And this really takes the industry norm and stretches the boundary there, giving the flexibility to the employee with the aim of boosting the overall morale. We understand that everyone has their own workload, whether that's a member of the sales team such as myself or the development team. The understanding is that your work can be completed in a way that best suits yourself in your own working week. Working 5 hours on a Monday in France and a further 8 hours from Scotland on the Thursday, as far-fetched as that may sound, the policy is designed to promote flexibility and self-control. A member of my sales team is currently based in Bali and has been for the past couple of months. That's working quite well at this moment in time. This is just one small piece of what we call the Halo Way, and that's what I'm going to focus on in the next couple of slides. And it's the ethos that surrounds the way we work in our modern ways of working. A key foundation of the Halo Way and our organisation as a whole is that we do not have a strict hierarchical organisational structure. Yes, we have our CEO and founder, and yes, there are product managers for ITSM, PSA, and CRM, but there isn't a board of shareholders who aren't uncompromisingly pushing for targets and profit margins quarter by quarter and year by year. No one at Halo has their own office. The CEO will sit in the bullpen, as we call it, in support. The workspace is completely open. Everyone is always accessible. We have those little lights for green and red, so you can see who's available to talk to them and when they're not. communication is key to the service that we deliver to not only our existing but prospective clients as well, especially being a SaaS organization. And the inherent ethos of change that is set out from day one of employment at Halo leads to a shared common goal that drives us all forwards towards that same goal. The third bullet point on this slide states that we look to prioritize workplace culture and employee satisfaction over profit margins. Whilst this is true, we all know that these priorities are not mutually exclusive of one another. A group of employees who are motivated and enjoy working for a company are proven to work more efficiently and effectively, only therefore bettering the service that we actually deliver to our clients as a part of that process. To talk a little bit about my specific journey at Halo, I've been at Halo for about 2.5 years now. This is my first job outside of university, so I'm quite fresh into the ITSM space. Most new employees will join Halo as recent graduates and enroll into the graduate scheme, and that's the exact path that I took. I spent my first 6 months rotating between departments. To be specific, that was support, sales, and consultancy. In that time, I learned about the product and how each department actually works on a day-to-day basis. And that set important foundations. We all know that within the SaaS industry these days, it's critical that you have product knowledge, no matter which department you actually find yourself in. At the 6-month point, I was selected as the first person at Halo to transfer temporarily to our Australian office and deliver implementations of Halo ITSM to clients over in Melbourne. And that opportunity wasn't reserved for someone who had been at Halo for X number of years and had Y amount of experience, really highlighting that opportunities are open to anyone at Halo, regardless of your experience, not only at the company, but also in the industry as well. To circle back to the final point on the slide, new employees can have a direct say from day one. Just because you're an employee that's only just recently graduated from university and you're 21 years old with very little experience in the ITSM industry does not mean you won't have good ideas on how a business can be run, how efficiencies can be gained and processes changed for the better. A great recent example of this, we had a new starter start about 2 or 3 weeks ago, fresh out of university, very little idea of what a ticket or service delivery team was, and they've completely redesigned our graduate scheme process. Their idea on how that should be run was very good, and I think from my very little experience, it's often key to listen to those that are new to the company, as they've got those brand new ideas and can bring a fresh insight to the organisation. Diverting slightly back towards the methodology and actually research behind the Halo way and the way that we work, I've included a diagram above which displays the concept of Brooks' Law, and I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar with this law and adopt this in your organisation today as well. For those that aren't familiar, I'll give a very basic example. Effectively, this law states that the number of developers you have working a team does not directly lead to faster releases, bug fixes, features, etc., almost along the same lines of too many cooks spoil the broth. This bolsters why efficiency is key at Halo and one of our core beliefs. We release a new beta version of Halo every 2 weeks and a new stable version every quarter, and this a very quick release cycle is controlled by our Chief Technical Officer, and we have 3 full-time dedicated Halo ITSM developers. So I'm under no illusion that's an extremely lean team, but the proof is in the product that we deliver. And the diagram nicely illustrates that the more people you have as a part of that team, exponentially you're convoluting the lines of communication that are created as well. As your team grows, more time is spent on coordination of that team itself and not the task at hand. Adding more members to the team can lead to those tasks being separated into smaller pieces, but does that always lead to increased efficiency? Admittedly, this is not a law that we decided to use by choice at Halo ITSM. When we were a startup a few years ago, our employee count was low. That meant our teams were lean by nature. However, as Halo has grown and become the fastest growing ITSM company in the UK, Brooks' Law is a law that we've chosen to maintain by choice, and this lean and efficient approach runs throughout all of our departments at Halo, not just our development team. Our great sales example, if we had a tender or RFP, we're not going to split that between 10 to 15 people. We'll keep that number lower, increasing the efficiency of completing that tender. Paul Graham puts this point across in slightly harsher terms, but I think this still resonates with Brooks's Law and efficient ways of working in general. Just to read the quote you see above, if you think people have scar tissue, you should see organisations. Each time there's a disaster, they create a process to prevent future disasters of that type. Eventually, they accrete a thick layer of these processes that prevents them from moving, and then they die. Like I said, quite harsh terms there, but I think it resonates quite well with the Halo way. To look forwards now, maybe towards the future and some of our slightly more unusual policies, we do now have unlimited annual leave. So it's a part of the package that we offer, and it's often the piece that draws the most attention. Does this mean that an employee can take 6 months off in a year? Yes, that employee has unlimited annual leave, and when we use the word unlimited, it really does mean unlimited, so that means the policy can't be abused in that sense. The point of this policy is to give the employee the control. They can directly dictate how much they want to work and therefore progress at the organisation as well, whilst equally not having to worry about what's the maternity or paternity policy that the company has. Take as much time off as you need and come back when you want to. Employees that are working have chosen to work on that day. The point I've exhausted throughout the session today is enhancing the support that we offer to our clients. A good example, a first-line technician who's exhausted their 28 mandated days of holiday in a year and is unfortunately forced to work the final week of December would not deliver an acceptable level of service in our eyes. So a basic example, I know, but again, one that can be pushed through all departments of your organisation. And as you can see via the quotes on the slide, this is not a popular policy at the moment in the UK, but adoption is increasing year on year at an accelerating rate. To talk specifically about the ever-changing ITS industry, Halo announced in June of 2023 that we won't be involved in any mergers, acquisitions, or private equity deals for a rolling 10-year period. Again, something that we're maybe not used to seeing in the ITSM space. Apart from the obvious benefit to, again, clients existing or prospective, this offers job security to all of our employees as well. We're the first organisation in the ITSM space that has such a policy, and giving that security to employees means that we're all focused on that journey that we're all undertaking together. Just finally, again, looking forwards at Halo, we do not want to stand still. We aim to continue adopting new ways of working and challenge standard ways of thinking in the workplace. Our challenger mentality has enabled us to go from startup to challenger within the ITSM space in very little time. And as we grow, our employee satisfaction, the service we deliver to our clients, remains as a core principle. Hopefully the talk today has made you question the way that you currently work in your organisation, and maybe you'll see some of the policies spoken about today becoming a lot less common in years to come. I look forward to welcoming questions during the Q&A session at the end of this morning's session, and please do feel free to come and have this conversation with myself and my colleagues at the stand as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. I can see a couple of folks standing up the back. There is actually seating at the front if you want. Just take your time and wander up. Third speaker, Kate Mackay, Senior Service Designer for M&G PLC. And one of the things she's going to be talking about is the application of AI when it comes to the point of design. So, Kate, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So this is my image that I thought I'd start off with today, and there is a bit of a story behind how I got to this image, because there's a real dilemma, and I'm sure all of you feel that in the room, that you kind of think, what do I think about when I think about AI? And we're kind of torn, and I certainly was when I started to dig through trolls of image stock, etc., looking for the perfect image to open up today. And I thought, is it Minority Report? Is it Skynet? Or now that we've started to kind of normalise what AI and the potential it can bring, is it about its application in medicine when we think about prosthetic limbs and the ability to have the electronic signals that can move them by themselves? Or is it when we start to think about the application of education on a global scale? And when we start to think about it from our aspect, when we bring it right down to our ways of working and how we apply it, is it about how we can then apply it to our processes, the way that we work, the way that we plan and generate ideas? So you can see that I chose this lovely little happy robot on a bicycle to actually illustrate that. And this is the dilemma right here, okay? We're really excited, certainly I am, but equally terrified by the future of AI and that kind of exponential growth that we've seen in the last 2 years. So as you can see here, I kind of went for a nice kind of cutesy children robots, and I might add, these are all AI generated images, by the way, just to put some more fear into you this morning. But what actually happened is this was actually some of the images that came up when I put in the term AI and trust. And it's pretty dark, and it's pretty varied, where you've got a lovely, sweet lady with her handsome dog, the scary robots, the medical person, and blimey, we've even got Christ there himself. So yeah, it kind of gives you that sort of aspect of where is this all going? So hopefully I've put enough fear and excitement into you this morning about how we can apply AI going forward. So what does that mean on our level when we think about it on ways of working and when we're looking at design in its own kind of capability? All this hype, especially that we've seen with the advance of Gen AI in the recent months, you kind of think these tools are just like landed on our lap now and we're going to go, wow, how are we going to apply this? But as you'll probably all be aware, we have been using AI for years. Google, Siri, Alexa, Netflix, yep, it's telling you what to watch on a Saturday night, and Amazon telling us our preferences for what we want to buy. And now we have a new type of interface, and that's really what's come to the fore in the last 18 months. And I'm no expert in this, and I'll leave it to others that will be here today to explain more about transformer, neural networks, and large language models. But as a designer, I've had to sit there and think, well, what does that mean for us in the service industry when we're designing processes and services and touch points for people? At its highest level, it helps us as designers take these large amounts of data sets to analyze what it is that's in front of us, which can take months to actually do. It can help us predict customer loyalty, potential churn, service satisfaction, and the tendency to use service and advocacy, such as your Net Promoter Score. It can ensure that the capabilities and skills of people can be used exactly where they need to be. So when we're also thinking about, and it's something that I think about a lot as a designer in a traditional workplace and industry, is what is actually the value of design in business. So it can help me forecast beforehand what the impact can be, and afterwards I can measure what the impact is. So it's no longer the fluffy post-it notes on the wall. I can start talking about how it's meaningful and no longer abstract or vague. So when we then think about, okay, at the lower level, and you've maybe seen models like this, they're kind of industry best practice when we think about that kind of design framework. So here you have the beginnings of discovery, you've got to then define, you come through experiment and learn, and hopefully then come through and to execute, deliver your service, listen to how it lands, and then take those insights forward. Today, I could go into great detail about how we could apply each stage AI, but I would only be and I'm only going to touch the surface because there is so much application that we can think about. So when we're thinking about one, we're thinking about, and I think Alex, you talked about where it was understanding enough information for us to find that wicked problem to solve, the right problem to solve, and not end up solutioning on something that you think is a problem rather than it actually being. So we can take that insight, that meaningful, that data, and extract what are user experience, behavior patterns, preferences, and more. AI's ability to find that correlation, what is it that makes someone actually tick, those patterns that can give us that kind of just the nuance of what it does to make, what it is to make someone do something, that is where the power of AI can be applied. When we think then about the define stage and going back to finding that right problem to solve, that's where we can, as humans, can take that forward, break the silos down, hopefully, as we go, and use that analysis with our teams to then say, right, how can we define a new, or come up with a concept of a new product, a proposition, a service? Using both the individual and the collective creative confidence to then think about the art of the possible. That's where that real complementary beginnings start to appear. When we take in the 3 and the 4 areas of this design framework, you can then start thinking, well, how do we visualize that? How do we simulate what we expect to see? And again, that's where AI can really then come in and be applied to help us. It allows us to realize our concepts, ready to experiment and learn. We can use prototypes, performance simulations, predicting user reaction to better then understand the feasibility, the viability and effectiveness of your potential concept or idea. And then into the 5 and 6 stage, you're looking at the impact and value, measure and insight. And again, the AI analytical capability to then bring that final service design to market and then perform your continuous quality control is just priceless. And then once it's launched, you can then start to think about how you can use that analysis and measure the user response, market performance, and sales. So how does this all then compute to how we take it forward as as organizations into the future? Is it people, is driven by people, enabled by AI? And what should you be thinking about and need to know when you're thinking about implementing AI in the business? I'm from a large company that is intrinsically risk averse. We work very slowly and we are mammoth, but I would encourage you to think about starting small. It's thinking about how can we pilot projects in a managed environment and experiment, see how it's going to land. Bring your people with you. I think this is the big thing as well. It seems to be, well, it's the area of tech or the innovation lab to think about what AI is going to do and its application. But again, if we've got to do this, and I'll come on to an area of ethics going forward, we need to bring our people and educate our teams about the potential benefits of AI, but equally some of the pitfalls. When we're thinking about automation, that's probably where everyone in this room can probably get quite excited about, is where it can excel at automating those all-consuming, kind of repetitive, time-consuming tasks that we've got to do in processes, freeing up us humans, which is a delight to me as a service designer, to bring you all in and think about those strategic initiatives, building creative confidence, thinking about how we can bring teams together to foster that innovation and drive that real change that all our organisations are looking for. And then when we start to think about customer journeys, the lifeblood of what I do, it really is only just scratching the surface. I couldn't even list the amount of applications of different AIs that we could use to actually enhance the customer journey. From predictive analytics to anticipate customer needs, think about their expectations or at least match them, and those behaviours, all at that individual level. And that then takes us on to the world of Gen AI when we're thinking about hyper-personalisation, providing the right nudge or recommendation at the right time when that person's thinking, I've got a decision to make. That's seen today when we're thinking about those self-serve touch points, when we're looking at chatbots that can improve first contact resolution for smaller, simpler inquiries, when you've then got a sales team that can focus on the big gnarly challenges. And service. This is probably, again, going back to Alex's point about get the basics right first, get a strategy. There's no point in applying technology if you don't need to. So think about where you can actually start applying it to reduce the burden on operational responsibilities and uncover the insights that matter. This is where AI can really help. Gaining insight into customers' more gnarly transit journeys and identifying bottlenecks and abandonment rates so you can take the right action can only be a good thing. Automated root cause analysis, remediation for common issues, I could go on. So let's face it, the potential for AI is endless, and this is the moment of reinvention. However, large caveat, and I'll pause for you to think, any invention comes with great responsibility. And yes, I'll pause for you to look at this AI-generated image of a gorgeous little cute girl and a robot who doesn't probably exist. So, the ethical dilemma. It is a complex dance that we will have to partake in over the coming years. When we think about the different challenges that we may face, they can almost give you that paralysis to not do anything and hide and think, I'm okay with my secure email, this is fine. So when we're thinking about some of the challenges, and I'll touch on a few here and talk about some of the subjects that we have to think of when we're talking about AI and that kind of ethical dilemma. Bias is probably something that you've all heard about that's crept into AI. And because the way those large language models work, they work with legacy data sets. So when we're thinking about how they have been programmed or how we've trained them, you can imagine the sort of biases that can come in. For example, gender and ethnicity is a large topic that's sharp in focus for 24. When we're thinking about, for example, certain gender or associated with certain activities, facial recognition systems, when we're thinking about, if a data set has been trained on a predominantly composed set of ethical groups, it can then flag up higher error rates or lower accuracy for individuals with certain ethnic features, leading to potential misidentification or even discrimination. One of the more topical ones that I think is something that started to make me fear coming here and talking about AI, and actually start to fear for AI in the future, is manipulation. Aside from the previous biases that I've just called out, personalised addictive strategies for consumption of online goods, gambling, food, any sort of that type of behaviours, taking advantage of the vulnerable or emotionally vulnerable individual to promote products and services that will match their temporary emotions, that starts to become a bit of a challenge. You've also got surveillance there, so when we're thinking about data, when we're thinking about privacy, what does that mean for us when we're actually thinking about these large data sets? And you think, yeah, I'm pretty safe at the moment. Joining the dots, I've got GDPR there, it's helping me. Just think of the consequence when all of a sudden there's larger data sets that can actually define how can I influence that person? Is this profiling on large scale? And actually does then the ethical dilemma of free will come in to play? Then when we're thinking about the misinformation and disinformation, when we're thinking about, we've seen it in the press about deep fakes, synthetic media, an example there when you actually had at the beginning of some of the geopolitical situations that have occurred, what is actual footage and not what's actually been synthetically made to stir the propaganda. So how do we start to, because these are big challenges, and you think, wait, this is way beyond what I should be thinking about at my level in work. What it will come down to is thinking about transparency. Transparency in that data-making, decision-making process. How do we tell people? So part of what I had to do today was to tell you that the images that I've shared with you, it was my responsibility that they are AI generated. So how do we do this and maintain that relationship with our customers? How does AI arrive at its conclusions? Where is the governance and regulations to then support robust regulatory frameworks to make our jobs easier to then apply the AI? Balancing innovation with ethical considerations is no easy feat, and it's something that we definitely have to think about going forward. One way of doing that is thinking about that collaboration. How do you get the policymakers, the researchers, industry leaders, and the general public to come together and think, both, I guess, at the terms of local level and global level, to figure out what is the best way forward with AI and how we governance it? And finally, thinking about that accountability, we've all got a certain individual responsibility in this room to think about, is this the right thing to do? It feels great in a little lab environment, and I'm sat here going, this is great. But what is the wider ethical, response, or what could happen if we take it out the lab and actually roll this out and scale it up? And again, I think, Alex, you talked about, you can put in a solution and you think it's the right thing, and then it starts to just exponentially grow. You think, wait a minute, I thought I was doing a good thing here, and all of a sudden it then grows tenfold. That same challenge can happen with AI. So I hope you're all suitably now terrified. But I think what we've got to see is the opportunity. Someone in my research for today, the term, we are entering into the fifth industrial revolution. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I'm sure we were in the fourth not long ago. And I actually looked at the timeline of industrial revolutions, and there was centuries in between. And I've already experienced 3. And so we are entering into the age of AI. It's an exciting time to be a service designer. I've got a whole new kind of toolkit that I can apply. However, AI at this point does not replace the need for humans to design for humans, but rather complement it, at least for now. Thanks very much.
Okay, anybody got any questions they want to ask? You can stick your hand up. We've got a couple of microphones in the hall, or you can do it via Slido. Thank you very much, Pete. Cheers. Nobody ever wants to start, but somebody's got to. Gentleman right at the front, can we get a microphone up the top corner here, please? Could you introduce yourself, so tell us who you are, and then ask a question?
Sure. Steve Hutchison from IBM. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned about the ethics of AI. What's the general, are all companies kind of coming together and drawing up maybe pillars to kind of follow? And if so, how far are we ahead of this?
It's a great question, and I'm not sure I'm probably in a place to answer that. I'd like to think yes. You can see through industry that there is a coming together, at least at government level. I think they're appreciating that we're facing into a mammoth challenge. And I think what I can answer on it, and again, based on even just looking at my research, it's that exponential growth that's occurred. And when we think about policy and lawmakers, are we actually in a position that we can bring in laws to support this quickly enough to then support us, what we're doing at business level? And I think at this point, there is probably a bit of panic in the ranks. So absolutely, I think there has to be a real drive now towards how we address the ethic dilemma, because it's not going away and it's coming at us at a rate of knots. So it's a great question, probably not the most qualified to answer it, but I think everyone in this room will have to take that away and think, what can we do to drive those conversations forward in our businesses?
Can I extend that to both Alex and Ollie? You know, the idea of bringing in regulation, is it potentially too late already? You know, is the genie out of the bottle?
I like the analogy of genie out of the bottle. Possibly. I think even in your talk today, that's as far as we know. There's possibly more that we don't know, and regulations don't exist to regulate what we don't know. So I think it's a really good point that you raise, and I think the answer is yes.
Alex?
Yeah, I think we're still finding our way in terms of, sometimes I think about it, the bullet was invented before the bulletproof vest. So there's many times in history we see that, and same with security, that the attack vector is created before the defense around that. So it's making sure that we don't ignore the problem and we just move at pace to ensure that whenever we see that things are shaping up to be a little bit hairy, that we start actually taking action quickly and don't get into that nice paralysis. And again, be good, not necessarily perfect. I think there's regulations being talked about and coming out, and individual companies should have policies and start thinking that these things are right place and taking responsibility. But yes, an ever-changing and exciting, and yeah, just like a scary world.
The last thing you said, Kate, was that we are entering the fifth sort of industrial revolution. We've never had a revolution before where the machines worked themselves. And that's the key difference in this. You know, we are at risk of actually losing agency over this, not knowing where it's going to end up.
Yeah, and I think when we've seen industrial revolutions prior to this, it's been transformative. There's no getting away from it, but it was at a pace where I think people could accept, although I'm sure those in the steam age would maybe beg to differ and say, hell, what's happening? It's happening too quickly. It is a challenge. I think it's the pace that we're looking at, the speed. We've all seen, I mean, AI, we've been talking about AI for years, and it was almost to the point, it was like, hurry up and happen, you know, and then all of a sudden, look at the last 12 months with Gen AI, it's just explosive. And I think that's where the real challenge is time. We need to give time over to put a focus on the right way of applying this. Mark, you talked about a statement someone said a few years ago at a conference that said, I think I'll let you craft the statement about, you know, this could be the end of humanity as we know it, because it could tip off the edge. It sounds terrifying, but we have got to get the right regs and governance in place now to ensure that we don't go down that way.
We had a speaker on a previous conference who was a policy advisor for Number 10, Downing Street. And they had discussions amongst us at a high level, and they reckoned that with AI, there was a 1 in 10 chance of what they described as an extinction level event. Would you get into a plane that had a 1 in 10 chance of dropping out of the sky? You know, it's seriously, seriously worrying. And these are beyond ethical dilemmas to my mind, because there's a lot of money to be made in this. And if you take as a comparison, for example, the war against drugs, which is doomed because there's a lot of money to be made in drugs and they never put enough money in to actually combat it. And are we likely to see the same thing, Ollie, with AI?
I believe so. You always have to look forwards, don't you?
Yeah.
You always have to look forwards. I mean, I think in my talk I spoke about looking backwards, but with AI, I think it's the complete opposite.
I'm trying to find Slido here, but it's going to sleep on me. Can I take there was a third question there about how, you were talking about how liberal your company is. Somebody had asked a question on Slido there, and I'm sorry I can't locate it at the moment, basically saying, how do you cope with employees who are underperforming?
Yeah, is it just that top one there?
That's it. Oh, there you go.
So yeah, underperforming, unmotivated employees with all the flexibility, what's actually driving them? I mean, when I joined, I was employee number 36 back in those days. We were very much a startup. The team was very lean. Now we're up to about 170, 180 employees. So I think it's the journey that's motivating definitely me. And when you join, you can see, I mean, I guess, yeah, the founder, he's always in the office. He's always talking about that journey. We were not too long ago working out of an old pub building. So it's really the story around the company. For those individuals that are underperforming, there's always an opportunity around the corner, whether that's our sponsorship with the McLaren Formula One team. There's an opportunity there, and it's up to the manager who you've selected to be your manager at the company to help with that motivation, look at that individual, what's going to motivate them in the future, and actually help them move towards that, whether that's progression through the company or external factors that actually helps them there.
One of the things you said in your presentation was that you got sent to Australia to Melbourne so to actually implement something. And you said, regardless of experience. That being the case, why did they send you?
Got to keep level-headed. I think it was just early signs. I really took to the Halo way. I was really enjoying what I was doing. I didn't actually take a single day of holiday in those first 5 months. I think it was just those little pieces, and I mean, even in my job interview, travel was mentioned, and that was a big piece to me. So when the opportunity came to go to our Australian office and implement Halo ITSM for our new clients over there, it was a no-brainer. And at it was 5.5 month point to be sat down by the founder of a company and given that opportunity. I bit his hand off at that point. And that's not just an opportunity for myself, it's for all of the employees as well, if you're progressing in that way.
Okay, no problem. Anything else from the floor? Before I carry on with Slido, just double check. Gentleman there, please. Thanks, Herbert.
Just a question or a concern on the AI ethics. I was reading yesterday that AI expenditure and investment in the US is 50 times what it is in Europe. And I think there's a tendency in Europe to grow an AI ethics industry. And if we grow that ethics industry, we might miss out on the technology. The investment and the innovation's happening now, and it's happening largely in the US. And if we just focus on the sort of bureaucratic side, we just might completely miss the productivity gains from utilising AI. So there is a risk of overemphasis on the ethics side.
Alex, thoughts on that? Sorry, Kate.
So no, carry on, Mark.
No, you go first.
I think you've highlighted the absolute tension that exists, and you're right. I think Europe is the poor cousin to America at the moment when we think about even the data sets that we're training our AIs on tend to be based in the States. I think DeepMind, maybe, again, I'm happily to be corrected. I'm no expert on the beginnings of AI, but again, was bought over by Google. So I think it's about how do we balance, we're front runners in the AI itself, but equally we're there also to not police per se, but to ask the questions about ethics and whether we should do something or not. It's a great question that you pose, and I think it's something that we've all got to think about, how we drive this forward together, but not fall behind also while doing so.
I'll come to you in a second, Alex, but could we get the microphone back to that gentleman, the questioner, please? Maybe I'm picking you up wrong. Are you advocating deregulation? Are you advocating a sort of Wild West approach to it? Let's see what we can do.
I'm not advocating anything other than posing the question, but I think there's a big risk in that Europe grows an AI ethics industry and just completely misses the technology. That's the big threat, and I think at the moment it's all in its infancy. And I think the legislation is just going to have to wait until our experience grows of using it. We have to get our hands dirty, find out what this can do, and learn, and then maybe come back at the ethics of it. I just see a big danger from an academic perspective and a political perspective that this ethics industry is getting arms and legs and investment, and it's perhaps at this stage it's the wrong approach.
Alex?
Yeah, and I definitely take your point on it. I think there's two ways about it. It's either wait to be led or be led. So again, it's that how much as us as in the industry are we going to try and lead the way in doing the right thing, or wait for an organisation to tell us what we can and can't do? It feeds back into what I was saying about the policies in terms of hiding behind policies. Government will always generally do what it can to protect and ensure that they cover any potential issues. So if we in the industry can show that we've got the policies and understand them between doing the right thing, but also that advancement, that's down to us to lead as well, and not wait to be led, and be in there to influence that same point in time rather than waiting. But it just depends on who's going to be that first mover. But it is a concern, as I say, that we're wrapped too much in cotton wool that we don't advance. But what are we doing to change that?
Yeah. The thought of generative AI in a presidential election in the States is not one that I view with particular fondness. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, let's go through some of the Slido ones then. Ollie, what's the uptake for unlimited PTO? In the US, I'm aware some studies show it actually results in less holidays being taken due to a lack of clarity.
Yeah, it's a good point. The policy for ourselves wasn't brought in until quite recently, so the data for us hasn't been released yet, but as you correctly say, I think from data prior to when we brought the policy in, you do see people taking slightly less holiday, whether that's their commitment to the organisation or they didn't want to be seen as the person that's abusing the unlimited holiday policy. For us, at the core of the policy, it's making sure that the service we deliver to our clients is not hindered by people not being able to take holiday. You've got a limit on the number of holiday days you can take, and that example that I used, if you're being forced to work the last day of December, the service you deliver on a support team is not going to be that of someone that maybe has chosen to work that day. So that's the core of the policy there, and the statistics for Halo will come out shortly, I'm sure.
And are these holidays paid?
These holidays are paid, yes.
Unlimited holidays?
Yeah. I think the flip side of that is if you do take 6 months off in a year, your progression at the company would not be that of someone that takes less than that. But it's up to you. You have the flexibility as that individual to dictate how much holiday you are taking. How much do you want to progress at the company? Do you want to be embedded at a top level? So it's completely on the employee and not the employer to make that decision.
One of the things you put on one of your slides, 1 in 3 people surveyed said they would leave a company if hybrid working was not available, etc. Was there any breakdown in that in terms of demographic, age groups, gender?
Oh, not to my knowledge. I definitely want to take a look at that, though. I mean, historically, it's not a way that we're used to. I'd imagine, and this is me assuming, that the younger demographic are much more preferring to work from home. I'll probably throw the question back to yourselves on the floor. Do you prefer working from home? How often do you work from home? And I spoke to Alex and Kate earlier on today. There are policies coming back in organisations saying you have to be in the office X days a week. So it seems like the policy might be reversing slightly. And I think that's the conversation that we had should be had is we are seeing those numbers of people working from home decrease. Should we want that number to decrease?
This is generally for the panel. What are the panel doing internally to help shape frameworks to leverage AI effectively without compromising ethics, standards and humanity, as that gentleman was talking about earlier? Kate, for that.
Yeah, sometimes I do kind of wonder, because I'm sure you all, as I said in my talk, we struggle some days on just getting the basics right, far less how we implement AI. I think it is about collaboration, bringing those people together and having the conversations and actually understanding the why. You know, I think AI is all about, it has the same format as any technology. Why would we use it? What's the compelling reason to do that? and bringing in that governance and robustness to kick the tire on it and say, is this the right thing to do? What benefit is it actually going to bring to the business, to our people, to the customers? And think of it that way rather than seeing it as this big, scary model. And I think to the gentleman's point in the crowd, that's where we can start, and you alluded to as well, Alex, let's apply it. Let's get dirty with it a bit to understand how it works, and then those frameworks will emerge at the given time. I think what the caveat always is this is coming fast, so we have to be prepared to be working in that fashion while this all comes out.
Yeah, one of the things that we're developing a policy around it. So I think we've almost got our policy ready internally. But it's not just developing a policy, it's testing that. So we're running AI hackathons, making sure we look wider, having those conversations. So again, it's not just about developing a policy and hiding behind it, it's putting those policies to the test with what you're looking at and looking at those different levels of innovations and the problems that we've got internally that we can try and use AI to solve and putting those into practice. It's a new area for a lot of us, but unless you actually, again, start small,
Yep.
And keep iterating, you won't get there, or you just wait and you're overtaken.
What would be the situation if your company came up with a sort of code of practice and said, right, this is what we're going to do, and all of a sudden you found yourself at a competitive disadvantage with another similar company? What would you then do?
I think it's more around talking about the value proposition of what you're bringing and the why behind it. If you truly believe in that why behind it, I don't think as a company should ever change your culture and your beliefs and what you truly feel. No matter if someone else is having a bit of a grey area, you need to stand behind what you're doing and always stand behind what you're doing. And if they've got a competitive advantage, then you need to work a way of using that difficulty to make a success out of it. Don't just sulk and be a victim. Take responsibility and look how you can change it.
Ollie, thoughts on that?
I think I completely agree with Alex's point. I resonated a lot with everything you said in your slide deck as well, that point about not being the victim and actually taking control over what you're leveraging. Sure, someone may have a competitive advantage, but you've got to believe in what you're doing. You'll, of course, look at the competition and inherit some of their methodologies as well. But if you've chosen your path, you should stick with that through to completion.
I don't think this is an entirely serious question. Will the AI also get unlimited leave at Halo? Possibly not. Alex, question for you. Did you ever create a service model from the ground up while at Tesco PLC Bank?
I didn't, but I certainly tested it, that was for sure. And I've taken a lot of things that I learned during that time to create it and shape it at Modulr. So the question there around what challenges did you face? So for me, what I've implemented more at Modulr is making sure that people understand the why and understand the real reasons behind what we're doing, and not allowing people to hide behind those policies and processes that you've got. And that's something that I have found in larger organizations, and talking to other colleagues, that you have people that just say no because they think it's their job to say no, rather than truly understanding the why behind it and being collaborative. But then you also have people that just try and get any old crap in because they think that's their job as well. So unless you really drill down to the why and drill down to the outcomes, you are always going to struggle and face those challenges. And there are some people that just don't want to change. And that's really hard in terms of those people that don't want to change. But you've just got to put a bit more energy and coaching into them so that they can see the why, understand the why. And again, that scar tissue that we've talked about, it's how you try and move that to one side and show them in small steps that by taking these steps that you can actually start making that model a success. But you need to start small, because just trying to do things on a big scale is going to be a huge challenge. But the more you build momentum, you can turn that flywheel more and more and more and more, then you get the breakthrough moment. In bigger organizations, that flywheel will take a lot more revolutions before it breaks through. In smaller, you can have less revolutions to get through. But you have to keep that flywheel moving, that momentum moving, to actually make that a success.
Interesting question from Paul Carolan there, saying, do you believe the service agents will push back against using AI due to fears over job security? Kate, for a start.
it's a valid point, and again, another ethical dilemma. I think it's, again, it comes back though to having conversation and understanding the why. Where does AI, where do we apply it in the business? Where can it alleviate the areas of, that are friction, that we can say, right, if we put an automated process in there, we can get our people to do more of the human-led work. It does come back just to the nature. We have to just be pragmatic. How are we applying it? What is the benefits? What are the considerations that we have to think about while doing it? And yes, there will potentially be issues with job security, but again, it's about how, and I think we're all getting used to it as humans, right? If I hear the word, resilience again, I could scream. The last 3-4 years and what we're facing into in the future, I think we've all become pretty resilient. I think it is about looking though as individuals, and that goes back to my point about bringing people with you on the journey, educate them about the era of AI. How does your skill set fit into that? How do we then think about our teams and how we manage people to fit in with that future? And I think that's more about how you position this rather than saying a robot's going to replace you. You're not going to be working.
I would take slight issue with a comment that somebody made earlier that AI is implemented when there is a need for it. I remember a speaker at one of the other conferences here, etc., who, I can't remember which council he worked for, but basically he'd been at a senior council meeting, and one of the councillors had said, how can we get some of that big data stuff?
I know.
Now, obviously they'd heard the expression. They thought, oh, this must be a good thing because everybody else is doing it. And I wonder, Ollie, how many companies are doing exactly the same thing with AI? If everybody else is playing with this toy, why haven't we got it?
Just blindly following
Yeah.
what everyone else is doing. Yeah, and I think just resonating with your point there, I think we've seen it before. It's not necessarily AI specific why people might be losing their jobs in the future. We've seen it with robots and technology coming into, I guess, car factories. People would lose their jobs that way through automation. So I think it's just the next iteration of automation, and it's just in the form of AI this time.
Yeah, to add to some of those comments, again, back to that responsibility, whether you are someone who's concerned about AI taking over your job or whether you're a leader of a team, again, it's down to your responsibility to see that coming and work out what you can do a little bit differently. A lot of the times we feel, again, done to, but what are you doing to upskill? So many times we see people that feel they've been done to, but have they been the ones who've really looked at, right, how do I reskill? How do I change? How do I go to my manager to get myself on a different course? How can I get ahead of this? You've got to be thinking about that for your people and lead your people in that same way so that you, organisation, will get the outcome of improved efficiency. Your people will not block the change, and you've done the right thing by them. Ensuring that they can use their skills to another way. But again, it's that taking responsibility and not imagining that change isn't coming. It is. Do something about it.
Gentleman on the front row here, please.
Certainly. So I was just wondering, do the panel see that there's any particular governance for legislation, whether that's at a government level or whether that's at like a business community level, that they would want to see brought in surrounding AI, whether that's certain industries like healthcare making a commitment not to use it in certain areas, or whether that's consumer protections being brought in to extend accountability for any mistakes that are made, for instance, using AI, anything like that.
For me, it's the biases on the data. The bias is a big thing, and I'd really like to see a lot. So the training of data is going to happen, and we're going to learn different ways around that. But something around bias is really important. One of the early examples that I saw was like you asked ChatGPT to name 10 famous philosophers. They're all men, and they're all white. Then you keep asking them and be more diverse, and then it added in kind of different levels of men. Didn't add in women because that's the data it's got to be trained on. So that for me, some sort of regulation or thinking or intentionalness around that bias is what I'd really love to see, because otherwise that's going to lead us down one narrow path and undo a lot of the good work that we're doing at the moment to have that multicultural and different unconscious conscious bias that we're trying to have. Not sure what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, for Halo specifically, we rely on the governance that the client has in place. We offer, say, Azure OpenAI if you want to keep your data off of open source, but we also offer ChatGPT. So for those organizations that is higher education or government or medical, like you said, they would never touch ChatGPT because they can't risk their information going onto the open source. So for us, it's the governance of the clients. I guess we're just waiting for governance from the government itself. But as a company, we offer you the different options, and it's up to you to select which one based on the specific governance that you've got in place.
And I think I agree with what the panel's saying. I would just add quickly, just again, what I've highlighted. I think it's about, and this might be the catalyst for how we create policy and the lawmakers, how we do that differently, and that it's not weighed down in bureaucracy and, traditional ways of working. How do we move as quickly to support this evolving situation to do that protection? And I think that is the big point. It's about, we can't apply old ways of working and how we've addressed policy to this new innovation when it moves so quickly. So it's an interesting space. It'll be exciting to see how they manage that. But equally, I think it's all, again, our responsibility to shout loud and push up ways. And I think there is a question coming up about how AI is being approached on the C-suite. And I think that's another big area, is how do we get our senior leaders involved in the conversations about AI and where it's going to go.
Isn't the main problem with that, though, is just about every other aspect of business, the C-suite are there to make decisions based on the data that's actually given them, based on the information they have, based on their expertise and experience. There aren't really many people at the moment who have all that. It's an unknown. So how do you explain something to the C-suite when you're not entirely certain what the implications are yourself?
I think I'll start first and then I'll pass on to the experts, but I think we've seen that with technology. I mean, I've seen chief technology officers being almost like being bowed down to because they held all the answers and the rest of the C-suite were almost in awe of this, chief technology officer. So I think the same applies here. I think but perhaps maybe we have to think a little bit differently and not have that kind of God complex, but rather think it is about collaboration. How do we do this together?
Also going on.
I was just going to say I can completely agree, and I think it's about surrounding yourself with the people that do have that knowledge. We're not relying on C-suite to be 100% experts on AI. I would argue that no one is a 100% expert on AI because the landscape is constantly shifting.
But carry on.
I would say for me it's that bit about being intentional and showing what you intend to do and why, and I'll have what I said about using those risk and audit frameworks, but not hiding behind them to slow you down, but make sure that you know what the risks are, what are the potential pitfalls, and how can you sort of mitigate them or step around them, and starting small to test if your theses are there or not. And then with a C-suite, if you can show that you have had that rounded thinking, you're more likely to get that kind of blessing to go ahead because they can see that you've done that rounded thinking, you've got what you need to do, you're doing this in a safe way, very well, go ahead. That's the easiest decisions. When you just give them something without any actual background info, that's when it takes a while. But that rounded thinking, the risks, the issues, the potentials, the starting small, the testing, that's when I've always found it's easier to get something through and that innovation through.
Going back to the analogy of the plane, and I'm going to chuck this back in again. If it's sitting there on the runway, and there's a guy saying, come on, into the plane, we're going to go and take off in a second. We understand, well, actually, we're not terribly certain how much we understand of why this works, but we're fairly certain it works. Would you get in it?
But I think that's where, though, you're starting you need to start in the right places. So if you immediately said we're going to test an AI driver of a train, you wouldn't necessarily do that. You need to, as with every technology, you build it up to kind of prove its efficacy over time. Driverless cars obviously have taken significant amounts of time to have that testing before they're on our roads, but AI chatbots, they've been deployed quite quickly because it's the risk around it and the blast radius that they've got is a lot smaller. So you've got to...
It's an unfortunate choice of expression, but
Yeah,
never mind.
Yes, but again, it's looking at that possible impact radius, I should say, and working out where the most appropriate place is so that we do build up, but we're not getting ourselves too caught up in analysis paralysis. But I don't know what the rest of the panel think.
I don't know that I've got anything else to add. I think
Okay.
you said that.
No, I think, again, it comes back to trust, right? I think trust is going to be the key factor. And I think we can all maybe relate back to when apps became the next thing and we handed over all our data because we thought we were getting it for free until we realised actually it was a perceived vision that we were getting something for free. It was actually they were getting our data. So there is a way to go. I think trust will have to be sought, it will have to be built, and I think it goes back to these, how do we get the basics right on it? And I think somebody's also, again, reading the screen, talked about those, you know, and Alex, you talked about the bias that are in our data sets on, you know, older data sets that have that bias built into them, and that's how we're training the AI. How do we create data sets without some of those nuances around biases? And I think that's where trust will start to be fostered. But again, it's just underpinned in the backdrop of speed. We have to be quick at this and we have to do it thorough. But it's a real dilemma. I'm not sure I get on that plane just yet from what I've read in the last, how I've prepared for this.
It's interesting. Another word for trust might be faith. You know, somebody used the expression God complex earlier in this discussion. And it was only when those two things came together in my head, I thought, I wonder why, when we're talking about AI, religion is so often referenced. I mean, you put up a slide of, you know, of Jesus or Moses or whatever it was parting the Red Sea. Don't rightly know, but I mean, there's something mysterious, otherworldly. It has its own agency. It's being done to us. We're in its control. Don't know. Thoughts on that?
It's almost something that we don't completely understand, isn't it? Which I think that's where maybe the parallel is drawn, and it is so powerful. It's something that is so new. We are trying to understand it, and I think that's probably where the God complex comparison comes from.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it leads back to your statement about the odds are pretty tough to swallow when you think about what could potentially happen. And I don't think, as you know, humanity is probably faced into something quite as black and white. And I guess it is a moment of truth that we're all facing into, whether we like it or not. The AI, we are entering the age of AI. It is going to infiltrate, if it hasn't already, our everyday life, our work, our children, what we do. And so, yeah, it's a pretty overwhelming topic. I mean, there was even like the hand, I think it was Michelangelo, again, I think it's Michelangelo. Is it Michelangelo that has the hand of God and Adam?
Yeah.
You know, I think there is really you know, people are having this real debate and there is a tension.
But we have been here before as a human population with so many different inventions that are around it. And yeah, you often find that it's that cyclical thing of people go, this is the devil at work, what is happening, and try and burn it. People were terrified of cars when they first came out there, and look at what happened. But it's how we adapt as a human being and as a human race. And I think I love the quote in terms of trying to work out how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. Yep. Again, we just don't know, but until we start moving forward, until we accept that change, we will never know.
Yep.
So we just have to keep moving forward, and it shouldn't be a blind faith, but it should be what are we walking into? I think one of the questions in there was, how do you measure the blast radius of a chatbot? Very good question, very difficult. But it's chatbots. We've seen them. Chatbots go rogue and suddenly going into some right-wing Nazi propaganda when they're talking. But again, it's the mechanisms that you put in place to try and limit that. So it's don't just put a chatbot in and just leave it to go. It's monitor it, keep on top of it, test it, keep testing, test, measure, test, measure, test, measure. Grow confidence. That's how you got to do it. And same with AI. It's test, measure, growing confidence, see what we can do, and don't be afraid of it. Embrace it.
Completely unscientific survey. Stick your hand up if you are happy, confident, sanguine about the future of AI, you know, and how it's actually going to be implemented?
Oh, how it's going to be implemented is a tricky one.
Yeah, it is. Basically, about 6 people in a room of probably about 180. That's worth thinking about. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to round up the questions there. Can I ask you to thank our first 3 speakers one more time, please? Thank you.